Yesterday, I found myself being overwhelmed by sloppy thoughts, a tsunami of them. No, thank you didn't work. This happens often after I've had a profound experience of calm or bliss. Is this just my mind's resistance? Can you elaborate on why this happens? And is keep practicing the only answer? Thank you. But what can happen sometimes is that if you reach, say, a new level of calm or bliss or recognition or awakening, that can be followed up by more challenging or more messy or more chaotic or more busy sort of mind wave reaction. Doesn't have to happen immediately. It can happen a couple days later, for instance. But there seems to be some logic, some rhythm, some physics to this mechanism, this wave, if you will. Sometimes I've called it the peaks and the valleys. So they're not ups and downs. Life doesn't have ups and downs. Life has peaks and valleys. Peaks where your attention is clear, more naturally awake, more naturally present, more naturally calm, harmonized, and focused and available. Typically, those peak moments are followed up with valleys. And why I renamed them peaks and valleys instead of ups and downs is because down typically indicates negative. Ups typically indicate or are associated with positive. But peaks are positive and valleys are positive. Some people like to live in the valley. The less we give things meaning, the more the natural nature of ourselves can shine forth. The more our natural happiness, our natural humility, our natural confidence, our natural generosity, our natural nature can show itself. Once we give something positive meaning in the midst of a lot of negative meanings, we start to give that so much meaning and significance. It becomes heavy, it becomes intense. And even if it gives you joy, at some point, the heaviness of needing to maintain giving that thing meaning, the artificial nature of having to give things meaning, which they don't inherently have or possess, is at some point in your spiritual journey going to tire you out. So that when you do have elevated peak experiences in your meditations or just in your spiritual insight or in life in general, the come down of that will not be so great. And then it will be more of a valley rather than a downfall. It'll be a valley experience where you can integrate what you've now glimpsed, what you've now realized or seen or experienced that was different or elevated beyond your ordinary level of perception. And now you may have a phase where you kind of integrate that. You kind of come back to the person level more and you're trying to make sense of it, but try to minimize how much meaning you give to it. Just try to kind of let it settle in. Just try to accept the new reality that you've glimpsed, the new possibility, and also accept the fact that in response to that, which is the second main element to your question, which I think is relevant for everyone, is that there is this natural physics almost, or metaphysics perhaps, to coming down from an elevated spiritual, expanded consciousness, meditative experience of a non-separate kind of joy or bliss or unity or freedom. And then the integration phase of kind of integrating that into your day-to-day sense of who you are. Your sense of self will have to adjust. It's very rare that someone has sort of a peak Satori experience and then they suddenly, their whole personality construct completely accepts that new paradigm, just like that, and never goes back to wanting what it wanted before or thinking, giving meaning to things the way it gave meaning to things before. It's very rare to have such a nonlinear interruption in going from oneself to a completely different radiant version of self. So typically, you'll have glimpses, you'll have peak experiences, and then there's the integrative phase of the valley experience, which is very important and valuable as well. So I want you to have a positive definition of the valley experiences. But yes, it is like the mind construct, the personality construct, everything it's used to, its memory, its sense of self, its sense of solidity, is going to respond to that moment where all of that kind of fell away for a moment. Now it's trying to make sense of the gap, of the emptiness, of the freedom, of the spontaneity, of the I don't know who I am, but it feels great, or any variation of that. And the more quote unquote profound or deep or penetrative those peak experiences in your meditations are, the more sometimes the personality construct is like, what the fuck just happened? Right? If it's a mild sort of like, oh, I was feeling really relaxed. That was nice. Huh, I was feeling connected to my sense of being present here in the body and hmm, which is great, but it's not the absolute level of glimpsing reality beyond all form and stuff like that. So the mind can sort of adjust that, can kind of integrate that easily. It's like, oh, this is just relaxation, or this is just, being more open minded, or something like that. So it doesn't require a huge paradigm shift to be integrated. But if suddenly, out of nowhere, never before have you had deep, profound meditation experiences, and suddenly you're going beyond even consciousness, and all that you experience is this infinite perfection beyond experiences, which has no ends, no beginnings, no time, no body, no universe, no world, no life. And yet it's perfect, absolute reality. Whoa, it's like a complete wake up moment from the entire matrix of experiences. Now you can imagine the mind has absolutely no symbology, no memory, no form, no person to talk to about this stuff, and so forth. So typically, then there'll be more of a what just happened, like, and then integrating that. It's not like we're actually taking the absolute and we're integrating it into the body or the mind or the personal life. It's not like that. By integration, I mean that the understanding of the mind body spirit complex, or smaller version of that, of the personality or the mind, is that its understanding needs time to adjust to that. It's like catching your breath after a run or a sprint. It's like catching back that oxygen of what you're familiar with, and developing new shapes and symbols to be able to have a conscious, intellectual, also an emotional relationship to what you've just experienced and realized about the nature of reality. So that's kind of the nature of what you're experiencing, and it's very common on this path. So thank you for your question.